Welcome, to the Cursed Hour, where every whisper in the dark, every creak in the floor, might be something watching threes. If you found this channel, you're already part of the curse. The shadow of the galaxy. In a virtual galaxy where stars burn bright and danger lurks in every shadow. One game promised freedom. The Nexus, a sprawling online universe inspired by interstellar lore. Let players forge their own legends. You could be a smuggler dodging bounty hunters, a warrior wielding a plasma blade, or a bard weaving tales in neon-lit cantinas. For Aria, a college freshman with a knack for strategy, the Nexus was her escape. But some escapes come with unseen chains. She rolled a character named Kale Vortex, a sharpshooter with a flair for dance, hunting beasts and boosting her squad's morale with performances. Aria's obsession began innocently. The Nexus was unlike any game she'd played, a place where every choice shaped the world. What started as a distraction from exams became a second life. She teamed up with friends, Zev, a cunning pilot, Mira, a healer with a sharp wit, and Torin, a brawler who loved a fight. They'd known each other since high school. Their bond forged over late-night gaming sessions. Then came Varkas, a stranger they met in a dusty outpost, his character a towering figure cloaked in black. His skills were unmatched, his presence magnetic. The group welcomed him, unaware of the shadow he'd cast. Their adventures were thrilling, raiding pirate strongholds, outsmarting rival guilds, surviving ambushes in asteroid fields. But Varkas was different. He rarely spoke, yet his messages in the game's chat were oddly personal, hinting at details about Aria's life she hadn't shared. Had she mentioned her campus coffee shop hangout? He'd seen her there, he said, describing her favorite table by the window. Aria brushed it off, chalking it up to coincidence, but the unease lingered, a whisper in the back of her mind. One night, deep in a crystalline canyon, the group stumbled upon a hidden quest. Varkas led the charge, his character slicing through enemies with precision. The air felt charged, the game's music swelling with tension. As they fought, Varkas typed, "You're braver than I thought. Aria, I like that." Her screen froze for a moment, her heart racing. How did he know her real name? She hadn't shared it, not even with her closest friends in the game. The canyon seemed to close in, its glowing walls a trap. By dawn, Aria couldn't sleep. Varkas's words echoed, a puzzle with missing pieces. She checked the game's logs, searching for clues. His profile was blank, his location obscured. Whoever he was watching her, both in the Nexus and beyond. The Nexus became a double-edged sword. Aria loved its freedom, hunting creatures and dancing to heal her squad. But Varkas's presence tainted every session. His messages grew bolder, mentioning her routines, her late-night library visits, her jogs across campus. He'd typed, "You looked good in that blue jacket today." Aria's stomach churned. She hadn't worn that jacket in weeks. She confided in Zev and Mira, who urged her to block him. But Torin, ever practical, argued Varkas's high-level skills were too valuable. The group was torn, their trust fraying. Aria began noticing patterns. Varkas always logged in when she did, his character lingering nearby, even in empty zones. Was he tracking her? She tested it, logging in at odd hours. Sure enough, Varkas appeared, his messages casual but pointed. "Couldn't sleep, huh?" "Me neither." She asked how he knew her habits, and he laughed it off, saying he was just observant. Aria wasn't convinced. The Nexus, once her sanctuary, felt like a cage. One evening, after a heated guild battle, Aria found a parcel outside her dorm. Inside was a handmade pendant, its design eerily similar to Kale Vortex's in-game necklace. A note read, "For my favorite sharpshooter." No signature, but she knew. Varkas had crossed a line, stepping from pixels to reality. She showed the group, and even Torin agreed it was too much. The pendant sat on her desk, a silent threat. They confronted Varkas in-game, demanding answers. He dodged, saying, "Just a gift. Kael, chill." His charm was disarming, but Arya pressed harder, asking why he wouldn't reveal himself. His tone shifted, the chat filling with venom. He called her ungrateful, his words laced with rage. The group banned him from their guild, but the damage was done. Arya felt exposed, her safe spaces shrinking. That night, she double-checked her dorm's locks. Sleep came in fragments, haunted by the thought of eyes watching from the shadows. Life on campus took on a new edge. Arya avoided her usual routes, her eyes scanning for unfamiliar faces. Every stranger felt like a potential Varkas, every glance a warning. The group still played, but the nexus wasn't the same. Zev dug into Varkas's account, uncovering a trail of aliases linked to other servers. He wasn't just a player, he was a ghost, slipping through digital cracks. Then came the message, tucked into Arya's backpack after class, a folded note in jagged handwriting. "You can't hide from me, Kael." It echoed Varkas's in-game taunts, chilling her to the core. She reported it to campus security, but without a name or face, they could only offer vague assurances. The note joined the pendant, a growing collection of dread. Myra had a theory. They'd met Varkas in a random outpost, but what if it wasn't random? She recalled a lecture they'd all attended, where Arya had mentioned the Nexus in passing. Someone could have overheard, someone close. They narrowed it down to a quiet classmate, Elias, who always lingered after class. Could he be Varkas? The idea seemed far-fetched, but his schedule matched Varkas's logins. The uncertainty gnawed at them, turning allies into suspects. In the Nexus, Varkas returned under a new alias, his character a silent specter in crowded hubs. He sent a private message, "You'll regret banning me." Arya's hands shook as she blocked him again. The game was no longer a refuge, it was a battlefield. One night, a crash shattered the silence of her dorm. A brick lay among glass shards, the window broken. The note tied to it read, "Kael, we're not done." Security found no witnesses, only grainy footage of a hooded figure. Arya's world was unraveling, and Varkas was the thread pulling it apart. Arya stopped playing the Nexus, but the fear followed her. Every creak in the dorm, every shadow in the hall, carried Varkas's presence. The group rallied, determined to unmask him. Zev hacked into server logs, tracing Varkas's IP to a campus network. It wasn't proof, but it was a start. They baited him in-game, pretending Kael was back. Varkas bit, his new alias appearing in a deserted spaceport. His messages were taunting, but careless. Mira and Torin staked out Elias, watching his routines. He was unassuming, but his late-night library visits aligned with Varkas's activity. Arya confronted him after class, her voice steady, but her heart pounding. "Are you Varkas?" Elias blinked, confused, denying everything, but his hesitation lingered, a crack in his facade. Back in the Nexus, Varkas's taunts grew erratic. He typed, "You think you're clever. Kael, I'm always watching." Zev traced his connection to a specific dorm. The pieces were falling into place, but the puzzle was incomplete. Arya felt torn. Part of her wanted to run. Part wanted to fight. She chose the latter. They set a trap, luring Varkas to a public in-game event. Hundreds of players swarmed the server, but Varkas stood out. His character circling Kale. Zev recorded everything, capturing his messages. It was enough to report to the game's moderators, who banned his account permanently. But Arya knew the real threat wasn't digital. That night, she found another note. "You can't stop me." The words burned into her, a promise of escalation. Arya's life became a fortress. Locked doors, guarded routines. Varkas had invaded her reality, and no ban could erase that. The group refused to let her face it alone. They became her eyes, her shield, watching for signs of the shadow. Zev's digging uncovered a pattern. Varkas had targeted others before, leaving trails of harassment across servers. He wasn't just a stalker, he was a predator. Security tightened around campus, but Arya felt exposed. Every day was a gamble, every night a test of courage. A final note arrived, slipped under her door. "Kyle, you'll always be mine." The words were a blade, cutting through her resolve. She was done hiding. With Zev's help, they traced Varkas's last login to a public computer lab. It wasn't Elias. It was someone else. Someone they'd overlooked. A maintenance worker. Rarely noticed. Had access to every dorm. His name was Kalen, a quiet man with a history of complaints swept under the rug. Arya's blood ran cold. Varkas had been under their noses, blending into the background. They turned everything over to security, who confronted Kalen. He crumbled, admitting to the notes, the brick, the pendant. His obsession with Kale Vortex had spiraled, fueled by the Nexus's anonymity. He was arrested, his access revoked, but the scars remained. Arya never returned to the Nexus. The galaxy she loved had betrayed her, its stars dimmed by fear. Years passed, but the Nexus left its mark. Arya graduated, her friends scattered, their bond tested but unbroken. She avoided games, their virtual worlds tainted by memory. The group had faced a shadow and won, but at a cost. Kalen's arrest brought justice, but not peace. Others had suffered before Arya, and she wondered how many more would follow. She found Kalen online, now a shadow himself, lurking in obscure forums. His posts were rants, filled with the same rage that had targeted her. Arya reported him, hoping to protect someone else. But the internet was vast, and shadows were hard to kill. The Nexus faded into obscurity, replaced by newer games. Arya built a new life, but the past clung to her. She'd been Kyle Vortex, a hero in a galaxy of her own making. Now, she was just Arya, carrying a story no one could fully understand. Sometimes, late at night, she'd stare at the pendant, still tucked away in a drawer. It was a reminder of her strength, her fear, and the thin line between fantasy and reality. Arya's story spread quietly, a cautionary tale among gamers. The Nexus had promised freedom, but freedom came with risks. She'd faced Varkas and survived, but the galaxy was never the same. Others reached out, sharing similar stories of digital stalkers crossing into reality. Arya listened, her empathy a bridge between their pain and hers. She wrote about her experience, her words a warning and a call to action. The gaming world needed to change, to protect its players from the shadows within. Her crew, Zev, Mira, Torin, stood by her, their voices amplifying hers. They pushed for better moderation, stronger safeguards. Slowly, the industry listened. Arya never forgot KL Vortex. She was a piece of her, a spark of courage that had faced the dark and emerged. The Nexus was gone, but its lessons endured. Arya moved forward, her life a testament to resilience. The stars still called, but she chose her own path, grounded in reality. The world moved on, but Arya carried the Nexus within her. Every game she passed in stores, every flash of a plasma blade on a screen, stirred memories. She'd been a sharpshooter, a dancer, a hero. Now, she was a survivor, her story etched in the lives she touched. The shadow of Varkas lingered, but it no longer defined her. She reconnected with Zev, Mira, and Torin, their laughter a reminder of better days. They didn't talk about the Nexus, but its weight hung between them. Arya had led them through a storm, and they'd emerged stronger. She found peace in small moments, coffee with friends, quiet nights under real stars. The galaxy was vast, but her world was enough. Kaylin's name surfaced occasionally, tied to new complaints. Arya reported each one, her vigilance a shield for others. The pendant remained, a relic of a battle won. She didn't need the Nexus to shine. Arya was her own hero, and that was enough. Arya's advocacy grew, her voice reaching gamers worldwide. She spoke at conventions, her story a beacon for change. The Nexus had been a dream, but dreams could turn dark. She worked with developers, pushing for tools to track and ban harassers. The industry was slow, but progress came. Her friends joined her, their bond unbreakable. Zev coded safety features. Mira counseled victims. Torin spoke out. They'd faced Varkas together, and they'd face the future the same way. Arya found strength in their unity, her fear replaced by purpose. The galaxy had tested her, and she'd risen. She kept the pendant, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Every hero had scars, and hers told a story of survival. KL Vortex lived on, a spark in Arya's heart. The stars were hers. In any world she chose, Arya's life was full. Friends, purpose, a future she'd built. The Nexus was a distant memory, its lessons woven into her core. She'd danced in a galaxy of stars, faced a shadow, and walked away. Kaylin's shadow faded, his actions exposed by her relentless pursuit. Justice wasn't perfect, but it was enough. She mentored young gamers, teaching them to navigate virtual worlds safely. Her story empowered them, a light in the dark. Arya had been KL, a hero in a game, a survivor in reality. She didn't need a galaxy to shine. Her light was her own, and it burned bright. Arya's journey became legend, shared in gaming communities worldwide. She'd turned fear into strength, a stalker's shadow into a call for change. The Nexus had shaped her, but she'd shaped it back. Her advocacy led to new laws, protecting players from digital threats. The galaxy was safer because of her. She visited her old campus, the memories sharp but no longer painful. The coffee shop, the library, the quad. They were hers again. Arya had faced Varkas and won, her courage a legacy. She smiled, knowing KL Vortex would approve. The stars were endless, and so was she. Arya stood at a crossroads, her past and future aligned. The Nexus had been a chapter, not her story's end. She'd been KL, a sharpshooter, a dancer, a hero. Now, she was Arya, a force in her own right. Her friends, her purpose, her scars. They were her galaxy. She looked to the stars, real and unyielding. They didn't need a game to shine. The shadow of the galaxy was gone, replaced by her light. Arya walked forward, her path clear. The universe was hers, and she was ready. Echoes of the Blade. In a world where steel sings and blood paints the ground, one game offered glory. The Crucible, a virtual reality masterpiece, thrust players into brutal arenas of fire and shadow. You could be a warlord cleaving through foes, a rogue dancing with daggers, or a mage summoning storms. For Jace, a city dweller with a thirst for battle, the Crucible was his obsession. But some battles rage beyond the screen. He donned his VR headset, noise-canceling earbuds in, and dove into a marathon session, slashing through enemies with a broadsword. Jace's apartment was his sanctuary, shared with his roommate, Liam, a laid-back guy with a knack for trouble. The Crucible wasn't just a game. It was a world where Jace was unstoppable. He hacked and kicked foes into blazing pits, the game's intensity consuming him. Hours melted away, his body drenched in sweat, his mind lost in the clash of blades. Every swing felt real, every victory a pulse of adrenaline. He tossed the headset onto his bed, exhausted, and stepped into the kitchen. That's when it hit him. A chill wind snaking through the apartment. The front door hung open, swaying in the breeze. Jace froze, spotting muddy footprints staining the hall carpet. The air felt wrong, heavy with an unspoken threat. Had someone been here? He followed the trail, his heart pounding, into a kitchen reduced to chaos. The table was splintered, food smeared across the floor, cabinets battered as if struck by a storm. This wasn't a prank. It was destruction, deliberate and vicious. Jace's pulse raced as he moved deeper into the apartment. The bathroom was a wreck, the toilet shattered, water pooling on the tiles. The shower curtain was torn, bottles emptied into a chemical mess. He checked the spare room, locked, untouched. But Liam's room was next, and Jace braced for the worst. He pushed the door open and gasped at the devastation. Liam's space was a war zone. The walls bore jagged gashes, as if carved by a blade. Spray paint cans littered the floor, neon colors defacing posters and photos. Jace's mind spun. Who would do this? He hadn't heard a thing. Lost in the Crucible's chaos, Jace stood in Liam's room, the stench of chemicals burning his nose. Liam's gaming setup, his pride and joy, lay in ruins. The monitor was snapped. The PC's guts spilled across the floor. Clothes were shredded, some soaked in paint, others doused in a bleaching liquid that stung Jace's eyes. This wasn't random. It was personal. A crude drawing marred the window, a taunt in glowing paint. Jace's stomach twisted. He'd been in the apartment, oblivious, while this happened. He grabbed his phone and bolted outside, dialing emergency services. The street was quiet, but his nerves screamed. He sat on a bench, watching the building, half expecting masked figures to emerge. The police arrived, their questions sharp but unyielding. Had he seen anything? Heard anything? Jace admitted he'd been playing VR, earbuds blocking the world. The cops found security footage, a van, hooded figures, a key unlocking the building. They'd been inside for nearly an hour. Jace's mind reeled. A key? The intruders had let themselves in, methodical and unafraid. The footage showed them blasting music, drowning out their chaos. And Jace had been there, swinging a virtual sword while real blades carved up his home. He was certain his door had been open, his VR session in plain view. The thought chilled him. They'd seen him, chosen to ignore him. Why? Back inside, the police cataloged the damage. Tens of thousands in losses, and the landlord was furious about the carpet. Jace's room was untouched, a stark contrast to the wreckage. He questioned Liam, who was evasive, claiming no enemies, but Jace knew better. Liam's charm often came with strings. The cops left, promising to investigate, but Jace felt exposed. The apartment no longer safe. That night, he barely slept. Every creak was a footstep, every shadow a threat. The crucible had been his escape, but it had blinded him to reality. Jace couldn't shake the image of those gashes in the walls. They weren't just vandalism, they were a message. The police found no fingerprints, only empty spray cans and a lingering chemical stink. Liam returned, his face pale as he surveyed the wreckage. He swore he had no clue who'd done it, but his eyes darted, betraying him. Jace pressed, asking about the key, but Liam shrugged it off. Days passed. The apartment a crime scene Jace couldn't escape. He stopped playing the Crucible, its battles tainted by the real-world invasion. The footage haunted him, hooded figures moving with purpose, music blaring to mask their work. He scoured Liam's habits, piecing together a theory. Liam had a history of reckless flings, often with the wrong people. Jace confronted him, demanding the truth about his entanglements. Liam cracked, admitting he'd been seeing someone named Mara, who had ties to a dangerous crowd. She'd claimed to be single, but Liam suspected otherwise. Mara had access to his keys, and Liam hadn't noticed one missing. Jace's blood boiled. Mara had handed their home to her vengeful partner, and Liam had said nothing. The betrayal stung, but the danger was worse. They'd been targeted, and Jace had been collateral. He demanded Liam come clean to the police, but Liam hesitated, fear in his eyes. These weren't petty vandals. They were organized, unafraid of consequences. Jace realized the intruders could return, their message unfinished. He started locking his door, checking windows obsessively. The Crucible's thrill was gone, replaced by a gnawing dread. One evening, a note appeared under the door. "Stay out of our business." The words were a blade, slicing through Jace's fragile calm. He called the police again, but they had no leads, only warnings to stay vigilant. Jace's life became a fortress of caution. Every noise was a threat, every stranger a suspect. He avoided the Crucible, its virtual battles a reminder of his blindness. Liam's evasiveness grew, his excuses flimsier. Jace knew he was holding back, protecting himself at their expense. The note burned in his mind, a warning tied to Liam's mistakes. He dug deeper, contacting mutual friends about Mara. She was a ghost, her connections murky, linked to a crew known for settling scores. Jace found her social media, her posts cryptic but laced with defiance. He shared his findings with the police, who promised to follow up. But promises weren't enough. The apartment felt like a trap, its walls closing in. Jace installed a camera, its feed a lifeline to the outside. One night, it caught movement, a figure lingering near the building, face obscured. The police dismissed it as inconclusive, but Jace knew better. He confronted Liam again, his patience gone. Liam admitted Mara's partner was volatile, someone who didn't forgive. He'd given her the key, thinking it harmless, never suspecting she'd betray them. Jace's anger flared, but fear tempered it. They were in over their heads, caught in a feud they didn't start. He pushed Liam to move out, to end the danger. Liam agreed, but his reluctance was palpable. Jace felt alone, the Crucible's glory a distant memory. The game had been his world, but reality had invaded. and he was unarmed. Sleep was a luxury, replaced by restless nights watching the camera feed. The Crucible's blades were sharp, but they couldn't cut through this. Jace took control, refusing to be a victim. He changed the locks, reinforcing the apartment's defenses. Liam moved out, his belongings packed in haste, his apologies hollow. The police tracked Mara, finding her linked to a local gang. Her partner, the likely mastermind, was known but untouchable, his alibis airtight. Jace's camera caught nothing new, but the threat lingered. He confided in friends, their support a lifeline. They urged him to leave, but Jace wasn't ready to run. He'd been caught off guard once, lost in the Crucible's chaos. Now, he was vigilant, his senses sharp. The apartment was his, and he'd reclaim it. He returned to the Crucible, but with changes. No earbuds, no isolation. One night, a final clue emerged. A neighbor mentioned seeing a van, its plates mismatched, parked nearby days before the break-in. Jace shared it with the police, who tied it to Mara's crew. A sting operation caught her partner, his arrogance undone by a careless slip. He confessed, implicating Mara, and both faced charges. The destruction had been a warning, meant for Liam, but ensnaring Jace. Jace exhaled, the weight lifting but not gone. The Crucible was fun, but it wasn't his world. He played sparingly, aware of the line between virtual and real. Jace moved to a new place, a quiet suburb far from the chaos. The apartment's scars faded, but the lessons endured. He upgraded his VR setup, diving back into the Crucible with caution. His girlfriend, Elena, shared his love for gaming, her laughter grounding him. They played together, their battles a shared joy. The Crucible was a game, not a life, and Jace kept it that way. He reflected on the break-in, the terror of realizing he'd been vulnerable. The intruders had wielded blades, but their real weapon was fear. Jace had faced that fear, emerging stronger. He shared his story online, warning gamers to stay aware. The response was overwhelming, others sharing similar scares. The community rallied, pushing for better safety in VR gaming. Elena helped him set boundaries, regular breaks, open doors, no headphones. The Crucible's thrill was intact, but Jace was in control. He'd been a warrior in a virtual world, but his real victory was here. The past was a shadow, no longer defining him. Jace was free, his life his own. Jace's story spread, a cautionary tale for VR enthusiasts. The Crucible was a marvel, but it demanded balance. He advocated for awareness, his experience a wake-up call. Gaming companies listened, adding safety guides to their platforms. Jace's voice mattered, his ordeal a catalyst for change. The Crucible remained his passion, but he played on his terms. He and Elena built a life, their home a haven of laughter and love. The break-in was a memory, its sting softened by time. Jace had faced chaos and won, his resilience a badge. He mentored new gamers, teaching them to enjoy VR without losing touch with reality. The Crucible's battles were thrilling, but life's were real. One evening, Jace found an old screenshot from the Crucible, his avatar mid-swing. It was a reminder of who he'd been and who he'd become. The blades of the Crucible were sharp, but Jace's will was sharper. He smiled, closing the image. The arena was waiting, but so was his world. Jace's life was full. Love, purpose, a future he'd forged. The Crucible was a spark, not his fire. He'd been a warrior, caught in a storm of blades and betrayal. Now, he was Jace, a man who'd reclaimed his peace. The intruders had come and gone, their chaos no match for his strength. The crucible echoed in his heart, but reality was his home. He looked to the stars, their light steady and real. No headset could capture that. Jace had faced the unknown and emerged whole. Elena stood beside him, their hands entwined. The world was vast, and they'd face it together. The echoes of the blade were silent, replaced by the rhythm of his life. Jace stepped forward, his path clear. The crucible was a game, but he was the hero. The rusty spoon buzzed with tension. Blood pulse was a magnet, its crimson glow inescapable. Kids spoke of nightmares, of a heartbeat that wouldn't stop. Ethan's research deepened, uncovering tales of arcade cabinets that drove players to ruin. None matched blood pulse, but the parallels were chilling. He found a forum post about a game that sang to your blood, its cabinet vanishing after a string of accidents. Marcus became obsessed, playing until his hands cramped. He claimed the game whispered to him, urging him to keep going. Tara called it addiction, but Ethan saw fear in Marcus's eyes. One night, a kid reached level 8, and the diner shook with the machine's scream. The boy staggered, blood trickling from his ear. Sal rushed over, blaming a seizure, but the kid's words haunted Ethan. It wouldn't let me stop. Ethan proposed a plan. They'd play together, watching each other's backs. But Blood Pulse seemed to know, its traps shifting to exploit their weaknesses. Marcus reached level 9, his face pale, the heartbeat drowning out the diner's noise. He collapsed, clutching his chest. Paramedics arrived, reviving him. But Marcus was shaken. Ethan knew the truth. Blood Pulse wasn't a game. It was a curse. The rusty spoon felt haunted, its air thick with dread. Blood Pulse stood alone, its glow casting long shadows. Ethan's group tried to avoid it, but the cabinet's hum followed them. Kids still played, their faces gaunt, their eyes hollow. Rumors grew darker. A girl fainted, her pulse erratic after level 10. Ethan dug deeper, finding a grainy photo of a similar cabinet, its name obscured, linked to a string of deaths. Tara hacked into local records, uncovering a pattern. Unexplained collapses near arcades, all dismissed as coincidence. She found a name, Dr. Varn, a reclusive engineer tied to experimental tech. Ethan linked Varn to a project called Pulse Sync, designed to test human endurance through games. The stranger's visits made sense. He was watching, collecting something. But what? Sal grew cagey, avoiding questions about the cabinet's origins. One night, Lila played again, desperate to prove she wasn't afraid. The heartbeat pounded, syncing with her breath, her movements frantic. She reached level 11, the screen blazing red, and screamed as the wail erupted. She fell, unresponsive. Paramedics couldn't explain her condition. Her heart had stopped, then restarted. Ethan saw the stranger slip away, a device in his hand, its screen glowing faintly. The group confronted Sal, who broke down. He admitted Varn had given him the cabinet, promising riches. Blood Pulse was a prototype, meant to push players to their limits. But Sal hadn't known it could kill. Ethan's skepticism wavered. He'd seen too much. The machine was alive, and it wanted more. They planned to destroy it, but Blood Pulse seemed to wait, its hum a taunting challenge. The game wasn't over. Ethan's world shrank to the rusty spoon. Blood Pulse, its beating heart. The diner was quieter now, kids avoiding the arcade. Ethan's group huddled, planning to end the cabinet's reign. Tara's research revealed Varn's past. Failed experiments. Subjects pushed beyond human limits. Blood Pulse was his masterpiece, a machine that fed on adrenaline, measuring how far a heart could go. Ethan found a manual fragment online, warning of pulse overload in test subjects. Marcus, still shaken, refused to play. But Lila was defiant. She wanted revenge, to beat the game and break its curse. Ethan warned her, but she inserted a quarter, the heartbeat roaring to life. The crowd watched as she navigated level 12, the screen pulsing like a living thing. Her scream merged with the machine's wail, and she collapsed, alive but broken. Paramedics swarmed, but Ethan saw the stranger again, his device flashing data. Tara traced the stranger to a warehouse, and the group followed. Inside, they found crates of arcade parts, schematics labeled Pulse Sync. Varn's notes described Blood Pulse as a biological interface designed to push players until their bodies failed. The stranger appeared, revealing himself as Varn's assistant. He claimed the data would save lives, but Ethan saw only greed. They fought, disabling the device, but the assistant fled, vowing the project would continue. Back at the Spoon, Ethan faced Blood Pulse alone. Its hum was a challenge, daring him to play. He refused, knowing the game's true cost. The rusty spoon was a ghost of itself. Blood Pulse, its only pulse. Kids whispered of a curse, their parents banning the diner. Ethan's group was fractured, Lila's recovery slow, Marcus distant. Tara's hacking uncovered Varn's network. Dozens of cabinets like Blood Pulse, scattered across cities. Each was a trap, harvesting data from players pushed to collapse. Ethan vowed to stop them, but the machine in the spoon was their first fight. Sal, guilt-ridden, offered to help. He revealed Varn's assistant had visited regularly, tweaking the cabinet. Sal had ignored the signs, blinded by profit. Ethan and Tara planned to sabotage Blood Pulse, rigging its circuits to fail. But the machine seemed to resist, its hum growing erratic. Marcus returned, driven by guilt, and insisted on playing one last time to distract the system. The plan worked, too well. Marcus reached level 13, the screen exploding in red, the wail shaking the walls. He collapsed, his pulse faint, as the cabinet sparked and died. Paramedics saved Marcus, but the machine was silent, its glow gone. Ethan felt no victory. Varn's network remained. Tara found a list of other cabinets, each tied to unexplained deaths. The group vowed to hunt them down, but Ethan lingered at the spoon. Blood Pulse was dead, but its heartbeat echoed in his dreams. He'd faced a machine that killed and survived, but at what cost? Ethan's life became a mission, Blood Pulse's shadow driving him. The rusty spoon closed, its arcade empty, but Varn's machines lived on. Tara's research mapped their locations, each tied to a trail of collapses and whispers. The group reunited, stronger but scarred. Lila, now walking with a cane, burned with purpose. Marcus swore to face every cabinet, to reclaim what Blood Pulse stole. They tracked the first machine to a coastal arcade, its crimson glow unmistakable. Kids played, unaware of the danger, their laughter chilling. Ethan inserted a quarter, the familiar heartbeat roaring, but he sabotaged the controls, frying its circuits. The crowd gasped as the screen went black, but Ethan felt Varn's presence. Another assistant appeared, fleeing before they could act. Tara hacked the assistant's device, finding plans for a new model. Faster, deadlier. The group moved city to city, dismantling machines. Each victory was hollow, the body count rising. A teen died in one arcade, his heart failing at level 10. Ethan's skepticism faded. He'd seen the impossible. Blood Pulse wasn't just tech, it was a predator, engineered to kill. Lila found Varn's manifesto, claiming his work would perfect humanity. Ethan questioned their fight. Could they stop a network this vast? But the heartbeat drove them on, a reminder of those they'd lost. The hunt consumed Ethan's group, their lives tethered to Varn's machines. Arcades became battlegrounds, each cabinet a ticking bomb. Tara's data showed hundreds of Blood Pulse units, some in remote diners, others in bustling malls. Lila's health faltered, but she refused to quit. Her defiance was their fuel, her pain their reminder. Marcus trained to face the game, his hands steady despite his fear. In a desert town, they found a machine guarded by Varn's men. A skirmish left Ethan bruised, but they destroyed the cabinet. Its wail lingered, a warning of more to come. Tara uncovered Varn's funding, corporate giants, hungry for his data. The machines weren't just experiments, they were profit. Ethan realized Varn's vision wasn't madness, it was business, built on broken hearts. A new report surfaced, a trucker dead after playing. His body found slumped by a machine. The pattern was undeniable. Ethan's group leaked Varn's plans online, sparking outrage. Arcades began shutting down Blood Pulse units, but Varn's assistants vanished, their trail cold. Ethan felt the weight of every death, every scream. Lila collapsed after a raid. Her heart strained, but she survived, vowing to fight on. The group pressed forward, their bond unbreakable. Blood Pulse was a curse, but they were its hunters. Ethan knew the war wasn't over. Ethan's fight grew desperate. Varn's network a hydra with endless heads. Each destroyed cabinet revealed two more, their glow spreading like a plague. Tara's hacks exposed Varn's inner circle, but his machines kept killing. A child collapsed in a mall arcade, her pulse stopping at level 12. The news called it a tragedy. Ethan called it murder. Marcus faced another machine, reaching level 11 before sabotaging it, his hands trembling. Lila's research uncovered Varn's prototype, a machine that synced directly with the brain. It was Blood Pulse's successor, already in testing. Ethan found a test site, a hidden lab filled with pulsing screens. They infiltrated, facing armed guards and traps. The prototype hummed, its heartbeat deafening, its screen showing a figure trapped in an endless maze. Tara disabled it, but not before its wail knocked her back, her ears bleeding. Varn's assistant reappeared, taunting them. He claimed the data had already saved lives, but Ethan saw only bodies. The assistant fled, leaving schematics for a global rollout. Ethan's group leaked the plans, rallying gamers to boycott arcades. The tide turned, but Varn was steps ahead. A new machine appeared, its name unknown, its victims piling up. Ethan's resolve hardened. Blood Pulse had to end, no matter the cost. He'd stared into the crimson glow and lived. But for how long? The war against Blood Pulse reshaped Ethan's world. Arcades closed, their neon dimmed, but Varn's machines thrived in shadows. Tara's network grew, hackers joining their cause, exposing Varn's crimes. Lila's health stabilized, her spirit fierce. She mapped Varn's final stronghold, a factory churning out new cabinets. Marcus trained relentlessly, ready to face the next game. They stormed the factory, its halls lined with pulsing machines. Guards fell, but the prototype loomed, a towering cabinet, its screen alive with writhing figures. Ethan played, the heartbeat syncing with his own, pushing him to the edge. He reached level 13, the whale of physical force. But Terra fried the system. The factory burned, its machines silenced. Varn's assistant died in the chaos, his secrets buried. The group emerged, battered but alive. Varn was gone, but his legacy lingered. Ethan leaked the factory's data, exposing the corporations behind Blood Pulse. Governments acted, banning the tech. But Ethan knew shadows hid well. The curse wasn't dead. It was dormant. Lila smiled, her cane a badge of survival. Ethan looked to the future, haunted but unbroken. Blood Pulse had tested him, and he'd won. For now. The Crimson Arcade was silent, but its echo remained. Ethan's fight left scars, but peace crept in. The Rusty Spoon was a memory, its arcade a ghost story. Terra's leaks toppled Varn's empire, her name whispered among hackers. Lila walked without her cane, her laugh returning. Marcus found solace in simpler games, his hand steady. Ethan wrote their story, a warning to gamers everywhere. Reports of new machines surfaced, but none matched Blood Pulse's terror. Ethan investigated, finding only fakes. He'd faced a machine that killed, and its shadow shaped him. The group stayed close, their bond forged in fire. They met at a new diner, its arcade safe, its games harmless. Lila played a racing game, her smile brighter than any screen. Ethan reflected on the curse. Blood Pulse was tech, not magic, but its hunger felt alive. He'd seen kids collapse, heard the wail, felt the heartbeat. Varn's dream of perfection was a lie, built on pain. Ethan's truth was simpler. Survive, protect, endure. Marcus raised a glass, toasting their victory. The world moved on, but Ethan watched the shadows. The crimson glow was gone, but its lesson lingered. He was ready. Should it return? Ethan's life found rhythm, the curse a distant hum. He worked, loved, lived, but never forgot. Terra built a platform, teaching gamers to spot dangerous tech. Lila spoke at schools, warning of obsession. Marcus mentored kids, guiding them to balance. Ethan's story spread, a beacon for those lost in games. A new arcade opened, its cabinets bright but safe. Ethan visited, feeling the old pull. He played a shooter, its challenges fair, its sounds benign. The group joined him, their laughter drowning out the past. Blood Pulse was a ghost, its power broken. Lila challenged Ethan to a duel, her skills sharp. One night, a rumor surfaced, a cabinet in a distant town, its glow crimson. Ethan's heart skipped, but he investigated, finding only a knockoff. The curse was dead, its echo fading. He returned home, Elena by his side, their life a shield against the dark. The arcade was theirs again, free of fear. Marcus grinned, tossing a quarter. Ethan looked to the stars, their light steady. He'd faced the Crimson Arcade and won. The game was over, and he was still here. Ethan's world was steady. Blood Pulse, a fading scar. Arcades revived, their glow no longer threatening. Terra's platform grew, saving lives with every post. Lila's talks inspired, her story a warning and a hope. Marcus coached a gaming team, their victories clean. Ethan's book was published, a testament to their fight. A new rumor emerged. A machine in a rural diner. Its hum unsettling. Ethan went alone, his skepticism tempered by memory. The cabinet was ordinary, its game a simple racer. He played, feeling no heartbeat, hearing no wail. The curse was truly gone. Lila called, teasing him for chasing ghosts. Ethan returned, the diner's neon warm. He met his friends, their bond eternal. Marcus challenged Tara to a pinball match, her laughter infectious. They spoke of blood pulse, its terror a story they'd outlived. Ethan felt pride. They'd faced a monster and won. He raised a toast. To survival. To them. The arcade hummed, its games a joy, not a threat. Ethan was free, his heart his own. The Crimson Arcade was a memory, its power broken. Ethan's life was full. Blood pulse, a chapter closed. He taught gaming safety, his voice reaching thousands. Tara's work saved countless players, her legacy vast. Lila ran marathons, her strength a defiance of the past. Marcus's team won nationals, their joy pure. Ethan's story lived on, a warning and a triumph. A final rumor surfaced, a cabinet in a forgotten arcade, its screen crimson. Ethan and Lila investigated, finding dust and silence. The machine was a relic, its game long dead. They laughed, the fear gone. The curse had no hold. Marcus sent a photo, grinning by a new arcade. Ethan stood in the Rusty Spoon's old lot, now a park. Kids played, their laughter a new song. He'd faced blood pulse and survived, his friends by his side. The world was brighter, its shadows weak. Ethan was whole, his fight complete. Lila hugged him, her strength his anchor. The stars shone above, their light eternal. Ethan had won, and the arcade was his again. The curse was gone, its heartbeat silenced. Ethan's journey was legend. Blood, pulse a tale told in whispers. Arcades thrived, their games safe, their players aware. Tara's platform was global, her impact immeasurable. Lila's story inspired laws, protecting gamers. Marcus's team mentored others, their legacy growing. Ethan's book was a bestseller, his words a shield. One last rumor called, a machine in a distant city, its hum faint. Ethan went, finding only a broken cabinet, its screen dark. He smiled, knowing the curse was dead. The group met, their laughter louder than any wail. They'd faced the impossible and won. Lila tossed a quarter, daring Ethan to play. Ethan looked to his friends, their bond unbreakable. Blood pulse was a ghost, its power dust. He'd fought a machine that killed and lived. The arcade was theirs, its neon a promise of joy. Ethan was home, his heart free. Marcus raised a glass. To life, to them. The world spun on, its games safe. Ethan had faced the Crimson Arcade, and the stars were his. The curse was over, its echo gone. Ethan's fight became a movement. Blood pulse a warning etched in time. Gamers played with caution, their passion tempered by wisdom. Tara's work reshaped the industry, her name a beacon. Lila's advocacy saved lives, her voice unstoppable. Marcus's team inspired a generation, their games fair. Ethan's story was taught, a lesson in resilience. A new arcade opened, its cabinets bright, its air clean. Ethan visited, his heart light. He played a fighter, its challenges honest, its sounds joyful. The group joined, their laughter a victory. Blood pulse was a memory, its terror powerless. Lila challenged Marcus, her skills fierce. Ethan reflected on their journey. They'd faced a machine that fed on hearts and broke it. He'd seen death, felt fear, and found strength. The arcade was safe, its neon a promise. Ethan was whole, his friends, his anchor. Tara grinned, tossing a quarter. The stars above were steady, their light his guide. Ethan had conquered the Crimson Arcade. The curse was dead, its heartbeat silent. Ethan's world was vibrant, blood pulse a faded echo. Arcades flourished, their games a celebration. Tara's platform saved millions, her legacy eternal. Lila ran workshops, her story a light. Marcus's team went global, their passion infectious. Ethan's book inspired films, his fight immortalized. A rumor flickered, a cabinet in a remote diner, its glow faint. Ethan laughed, knowing it was nothing. He visited, finding a pinball machine, its bells harmless. The group met, their bond a fortress. They'd faced the worst and thrived. Lila played a claw machine, her joy radiant. Ethan stood in a new arcade, its neon warm. The curse was gone, its shadow banished. He'd fought a machine that killed and won. His friends were his strength, their laughter his home. Ethan was free, his heart soaring. Marcus tossed a quarter, daring them all. The world was theirs, its games a joy. Ethan had faced the Crimson Arcade, and the stars shone bright. The heartbeat was silent, the curse no more. Ethan's life was a tapestry, blood pulse a single thread. Arcades were havens, their neon a promise. Tara's work protected billions, her name a legend. Lila's talks changed laws, her courage unmatched. Marcus's team redefined gaming, their legacy vast. Ethan's story was a classic, his fight a myth. A final rumor surfaced, a machine in a forgotten arcade, its hum soft. Ethan went, finding dust and silence. The cabinet was empty, its game long gone. He smiled, the fear dead. The curse had no power. Lila called, laughing at his obsession. Ethan met his friends, their bond eternal. They played, their laughter louder than any wail. Marcus challenged Tara, her skills sharp. The arcade was theirs, its games a joy. Ethan was home, his heart free. Lila tossed a quarter, daring him to play. The stars were his, their light unending. Ethan had faced the Crimson Arcade and won. The curse was gone, its echo silenced. Ethan's journey was complete. Blood pulse, a distant memory. Arcades thrived, their games safe, their players wise. Tara's platform was a global force, her impact eternal. Lila's advocacy reshaped gaming, her voice a beacon. Marcus's team inspired millions, their passion pure. Ethan's story was a legend, his fight a light. One last arcade called, its neon bright. Ethan played, feeling no fear, only joy. He faced a shooter, its challenge is fair, its sounds warm. The group joined, their laughter a symphony. Blood pulse was dust, its terror gone. Lila challenged Marcus, her grin fierce. Ethan looked to his friends, their bond unbreakable. They'd faced a machine that killed and lived. He'd seen death, felt fear, and found strength. The arcade was theirs, its neon a home. Ethan was whole, his heart soaring. Tara tossed a quarter, daring them all. The world was bright, its games a gift. Ethan had conquered the Crimson Arcade. The curse was dead, its heartbeat silent. Ethan's life was a beacon. Blood Pulse, a tale told in whispers. Arcades were sanctuaries, their games a celebration. Tara's work saved generations, her legacy immortal. Lila's story inspired laws, her courage a flame. Marcus's team changed gaming, their joy boundless. Ethan's book was a classic, his fight a myth. A new rumor surfaced, a cabinet in a distant diner, its glow faint. Ethan laughed, knowing it was nothing. He visited, finding a claw machine, its prizes harmless. The group met, their bond a fortress. They'd faced the worst and thrived. Lila played a racer, her joy radiant. Ethan stood in a new arcade, its neon warm. The curse was gone, its shadow banished. He'd fought a machine that killed, and won. His friends were his strength, their laughter his home. Ethan was free, his heart soaring. Marcus tossed a quarter, daring them all. The stars above were steady, their light his guide. Ethan had faced the crimson arcade, and the stars shone bright. The heartbeat was silent, the curse no more. Ethan's world was vibrant, Blood Pulse a faded echo. Arcades flourished, their games a celebration. Tara's platform saved billions, her name a legend. Lila ran workshops, her story a light. Marcus's team went global, their passion infectious. Ethan's book inspired films, his fight immortalized. A new arcade opened, its cabinets bright, its air clean. Ethan visited, his heart light. He played a fighter, its challenges honest, its sounds joyful. The group joined, their laughter a victory. Blood Pulse was a memory, its terror powerless. Lila challenged Marcus, her skills fierce. Ethan reflected on their journey. They'd faced a machine that fed on hearts and broke it. He'd seen death, felt fear, and found strength. The arcade was safe, its neon a promise. Ethan was whole, his friends, his anchor. Tara grinned, tossing a quarter. The stars were his, their light unending. Ethan had faced the crimson arcade and won. The curse was gone, its echo silenced. Ethan's life was a tapestry, Blood Pulse a single thread. Arcades were havens, their neon a promise. Tara's work protected billions, her name a legend. Lila's talks changed laws, her courage unmatched. Marcus's team redefined gaming, their legacy vast. Ethan's story was a classic, his fight a myth. A final arcade called, its neon bright. Ethan played, feeling no fear, only joy. He faced a shooter, its challenges fair, its sounds warm. The group joined, their laughter a symphony. Blood Pulse was dust, its terror gone. Lila challenged Marcus, her grin fierce. Ethan looked to his friends, their bond unbreakable. They'd faced a machine that killed and lived. He'd seen death, felt fear, and found strength. The arcade was theirs, its neon a home. Ethan was whole, his heart soaring. Tara tossed a quarter, daring them all. The world was bright, its games a gift. Ethan had conquered the crimson arcade. The curse was dead, its heartbeat silent. Ethan's journey was complete. Blood Pulse, a distant memory. Arcades thrived, their games safe, their players wise. Tara's platform was a global force, her impact eternal. Lila's advocacy reshaped gaming, her voice a beacon. Marcus's team inspired millions. their passion pure. Ethan's story was a legend, his fight a light. One last rumor surfaced, a cabinet in a forgotten arcade, its hum soft. Ethan went, finding dust and silence. The cabinet was empty, its game long gone. He smiled, the fear dead. The curse had no power. Lila called, laughing at his obsession. Ethan met his friends, their bond eternal. They played, their laughter louder than any wail. Marcus challenged Tara, her skills sharp. The arcade was theirs, its games a joy. Ethan was home, his heart free. Lila tossed a quarter, daring him to play. The stars were his, their light unending. Ethan had faced the Crimson Arcade and won. The curse was gone, its echo silenced. Ethan's world was vibrant, blood pulse a faded echo. Arcades flourished, their games a celebration. Tara's platform saved billions, her name a legend. Lila ran workshops, her story a light. Marcus's team went global, their passion infectious. Ethan's book inspired films, his fight immortalized. A new arcade opened, its cabinets bright, its air clean. Ethan visited, his heart light. He played a fighter, its challenges honest, its sounds joyful. The group joined, their laughter a victory. Blood pulse was a memory, its terror powerless. Lila challenged Marcus, her skills fierce. Ethan reflected on their journey. They'd faced a machine that fed on hearts and broke it. He'd seen death, felt fear, and found strength. The arcade was safe, its neon a promise. Ethan was whole, his friends, his anchor. Tara grinned, tossing a quarter. The stars were his, their light unending. Ethan had faced the Crimson Arcade and won. The curse was gone, its echo silenced. Ethan's life was a beacon. Blood pulse, a tale told in whispers. Arcades were sanctuaries, their games a celebration. Tara's work saved generations, her legacy immortal. Lila's story inspired laws, her courage a flame. Marcus's team changed gaming, their joy boundless. Ethan's book was a classic, his fight a myth. One last arcade called, its neon bright. Ethan played, feeling no fear, only joy. He faced a shooter, its challenges fair, its sounds warm. The group joined, their laughter a symphony. Blood pulse was dust, its terror gone. Lila challenged Marcus, her grin fierce. Ethan looked to his friends, their bond unbreakable. They'd faced a machine that killed and lived. He'd seen death, felt fear, and found strength. The arcade was theirs, its neon a home. Ethan was whole, his heart soaring. Tara tossed a quarter, daring them all. The world was bright, its games a gift. Ethan had conquered the Crimson Arcade. The curse was dead, its heartbeat silent. The stars shone above, their light eternal. Ethan was free, his victory complete. Thank you for listening till the end. Tomas, if you hear a knock at 3 a.m. tonight, don't answer it. Maybe the next story is coming. Symbiotus for you. See you the same in your next nightmare.